Welcome everyone to this funding opportunity informational webinar for the EPSRC Critical Mass Programmes to drive a sustainable future funding opportunity. It's really great to have so many of you here. We had over 200 people register, and we hope through this webinar you'll learn some more information about the funding opportunity and how to apply. So a bit about the format of today's webinar. So we'll have a few quick introductions to the team leading the funding opportunity for a few minutes, followed by some webinar housekeeping, a presentation on the funding opportunity itself, and a moderated question and answer session where you'll be able to ask your questions to those of us working on this. So a bit of housekeeping. This event is being recorded for those who can't join us live. You shouldn't be able to unmute yourselves or show your videos. So don't worry, we can't see or hear you. But if you find that you're able to, please remember not to, so that we maintain a nice, quiet environment at this webinar. This event is fully closed captioned. You can use the CC button at the bottom of your screen to show or hide the captions. We've addressed all accessibility requests that we've received as well. If you have any tech issues or want to use the chat, please only use the chat for raising technical issues during the webinar, and please note your name will be shown. The raise hand function is also not being monitored. Please remember to submit your questions as the webinar progresses using the Q&A function. If you've got any questions specifically about the UKRI funding service, please email the team that looks after that. We won't be answering any questions on that today. If you've got any further questions, you can also send that to our email addresses that will have been sent to you when you got your Zoom details. Any eligibility questions which refer to a specific individual or team should be emailed directly to us as well. I'll now let everyone introduce themselves, starting with Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Sato, a member of the Energy and Decarbonisation team working on this call.
So my name's Remits. I'm also working on this call with Adam, Amanda, Anka and Jim, and I'm in the manufacturing and circular economy team.
Hi, I'm Amanda Howes. I'm a portfolio manager working in the Energy and Decarbonisation team. In relation to this call, my action is the interseasonal energy storage.
Hello, I'm Anka Davis. I'm a joint head of manufacturing and the circular economy.
Hi, I'm Jim Fleming. I'm one of the joint heads of the Energy and Decarbonisation team.
So if you have sent any questions to us, you probably heard from one or all of us at some point. And Amanda and Anka and Jim will be our panel for the Q&A session, and Adam and I will be moderating that. So a bit about the purpose of today's webinar. So this is to introduce and provide an overview of the critical mass programmes to drive a sustainable future funding opportunity, and to ensure that all of you who'd like to apply understand the key aims of the scheme, the application process, the assessment process, and also to give you an opportunity to ask questions. Please make sure that you've read the funding opportunity document. That link will be dropped in the chat very shortly, but we've also got a QR code for those of you that would prefer to scan that to view it as the webinar progresses. And now I'm going to hand over to Adam, who will talk more about the background of the call.
Hi, so the EPSRC Strategic Delivery Plan with the Engineering Net Zero priority very much sits behind informing this call and spanning across both manufacturing and the circular economy and energy and decarbonisation remits to pioneer new technologies and the rapid scaling and evolution of current technologies to increase the speeds and deliverability of net zero and shift us away from environmentally detrimental materials, industries, processes to more circular and sustainable alternatives. So some of the core aims of the funding opportunity will be to support 3 critical mass programmes, 5 years in length, spanning transdisciplinary research to directly contribute to that shift away from environmentally detrimental materials, technologies, energy solutions and operations towards more sustainable, clean and circular ones. Within that, discovering, informing and optimising equitable and resilient approaches to the solutions that the UK will require in its mid to long-term future, thinking through the 2030s and 2040s. In addition, there is a highlight area within this funding opportunity for programmes that wish to target interseasonal energy storage beyond the remit of hydrogen. This is because we've had a saturation of hydrogen research in interseasonal energy storage. So the aim of that highlight area is to raise the capability in UK research to deliver large volumes of season to season, thinking 3 or more months at grid scale, energy storage to take best advantage of the growth in the UK's renewable energy generation. The whole funding opportunity is being intended as a pilot, and at the end we will be reviewing and evaluating the funding opportunity and the research landscape. So if there are to be any future rounds of this, will be more targeted in scope. So this call deliberately sits very broad. So the funding available, this can be read in more detail on the funding opportunity page, but there's 5.7 million at full economic cost with 3 programs of that size under critical mass, and interseasonal energy storage highlight area, we're looking to fund approximately 3 with up to 3 million full economic cost. And the standard EPSRC rule of contributing 80% of that full economic cost applies, with durations of these programs lasting up to 5 years. So what is within the remit of those projects? They're including but not limited to advanced renewable energy technologies, playing a part in the transition or revision of existing technologies towards more sustainable solutions. Decarbonising cross-modal transport, land, air and sea, sustainable next generation manufacturing technologies, processes and systems, and technologies to enable a circular economy, particularly thinking about reuse, refurbish, remanufacturing, and life cycle analysis, designing from the beginning for longer in-life solutions. The highlight area of interseasonal energy storage excludes hydrogen, but some themes that might be included but are not limited to electrochemical storage, thermal storage, gravitational potential, and thinking about the whole energy system, production of the storage technologies, integration of the storage, and use of the energy storage system. So what is in remit in terms of other councils and other disciplines? Applicants are expected to co-create solutions between disciplines within and beyond EPSRC's remit as appropriate to their proposal's vision. However, the majority of research must sit within the physical sciences and engineering disciplines. That is 50%. And the aim must be to drive a sustainable and net zero future from 2030. And that should not be a mere beneficiary or potential impact, but rather the core focus of the programme. Other council remits, so sustainability is inherently transdisciplinary in nature. And what we mean by this in the core, we've defined it in the funding opportunity page as transgressing the boundaries between disciplinary knowledge, integrating bodies of knowledge and activity co-created between academic and societal partners such as policymakers and business. And so the reason for this is very much to put the context of your research within the systems that they'll exist to maximize transferable and translatable findings to impact the medium to long-term future of the UK. So what we mean by critical mass, we're trying to enhance capability across the UK and build these consortia for researchers surrounded with a particular view of achieving that aim collectively, and that to be the basis of their research project. We recognise that delivering a sustainable, prosperous and resilient future has a lot of complexities and high risk, and therefore it requires the integration of multiple different stakeholders and those transdisciplinary teams that we mentioned that can go beyond the remit of EPSRC alone. And so these investments provide the scale, flexibility and length of award necessary to support that critical mass to form. They're expected to exhibit a particular set of features which we believe will be vital for delivering impact against EPSRC's engineering net zero strategy. And those are found within the programme's must and programme should sections of the funding opportunity. So I won't read out all of these because you can find them on our website, but these are what we would expect of the programme. So what a successful programme would look like, addressing EPSRC's strategy by delivering high quality novel engineering and physical science research to address its timely and strategic important challenge of net zero and sustainability for the UK's medium to long-term future. Deliver broader benefits to the society, economy and environment, think of the whole system approach, and have clear pathways to impact to translate to the domain of the 2030s and 2040s. Engage, collaborate and co-create with industry, policy and third sectors. Consider the wider system in which proposed programmes, research and planned outputs will exist. Embed careful consideration of environmental sustainability throughout the lifetime of the programme, designing it in from the start, all proposed project outputs, outcomes, research approaches and operations. And to maximise quality and impact by having those collaborative and transdisciplinary teams in the consortia and co-creation with the stakeholders, either academic or non-academic, across and beyond our remit of councils. Complement how you'll interact with the existing investments funded in EPSRC and UKRI in that area, and demonstrate how your work will add value. So that's on the onus for you to show how this will not repeat an investment or exist and work with them. So we're causing a difference. Eligibility. So we've had a few questions around this, and the standard business rules apply to, that EPSRC has on the website. You have to be an individual hosted at a UK research organisation, and we have a list of eligible organisations on the website. There can only be one application per project lead. However, you could be a co-lead on multiple applications. There's no restriction on that. And we've also been asked, can each individual institution have different applications as long as there's different project leads? And yes, there's no limit per institution. And a quick note that the terms investigators have changed to leads. So PI is now project lead and co-I is now project co-lead. That's detailed on our website. For the expression of interest stage, which is currently open, you only have to list the project leads and co-leads that you intend to have on a proposed host organisation in terms of who is eligible for the funding. Eligible costs, the standard EPSRC business rules apply, so you can find more about this on our website on the costs you can apply for page. You do not have to provide any indicative costs at the expression of interest stage. That would be expected later on if you're invited successfully into the full opportunity. But there is a table of the quick types of things that can be funded: equipment, travel, substance, costs of researchers, and no exceptions apart from through our Norway co-lead scheme, where co-leads from Norwegian institutions can be funded. So this is a bit about the project roles. Again, you can find this on the UKRI website. There's definitions around the different types of people you can have on an enabling team in your project, such as grant managers, PDRAs, visiting researchers, technicians, etc. If you're planning to recruit for a position like a postdoc, the unnamed role and resource can be included in the resources and justification section. Again, this is not going to be asked for at the expression of interest stage. This will come later on in the full opportunity, which is being run on the new funding service of UKRI TFS. But it might just be useful to think about yourselves. So we've been asked a lot, are project partners eligible and what types of project partners? Yes, again, you don't have to provide your intended project partners at the expression of interest stage, but it might be useful for you to start thinking about who you might want on a team. And the standard EPSRC business rules apply. You can have overseas and international project partners or visiting researchers in that fact within the realms of the UK's responsible research and innovation requirements, which are listed both on the UK government website and the UKRI websites, and your host organisations will be very familiar with. So thinking about trusted research and due diligence of the partners you'll be working with, and export controls, things like that. Project partners can receive small amounts of funding where justified. We're thinking small expenses of travel and subsistence to attend project meetings that are vital for delivering the programmes. And visiting researchers may be requested by overseas collaborators for up to 12 months. And again, they'll be subject to approval. There is a quick table summary of eligible overseas costs, which are standard business rules in EPSRC. These slides will be made available after this event today, so you can read through them at your leisure. And I'll pass back to Remit.
Thanks, Adam. So we've got some additional considerations for you to think about. So firstly, equality, diversity and inclusion. So EPSRC aims to support a diverse and inclusive research environment where there's equality of opportunities. We support people to work in a way that suits their personal circumstances. So this includes things like career breaks, support for people with caring responsibilities, flexible working and alternative working patterns. And there's a page on our website that you'll be able to find out more details about this for. So we strongly encourage you to integrate EDI into your application. Are you expected to know about EDI as an applicant? Project teams are not expected to have specific EDI expertise. We also have the Good Resource Hub that has a lot of good resources on that. But things we'd like you to consider within your application. So how you will support capacity building and skills development across and beyond the research programme. So this is things like team formation and activity and outcomes planning, and to integrate EDI principles into all parts of the application. So how will you foster a nurturing research culture specifically? Other considerations to take into account, so these are responsible innovation, trusted research and innovation, export control, and visas. And specifically around trusted research and innovation. So trusted research is a sector term for protecting the UK's intellectual property, sensitive research, people and infrastructure from potential theft, manipulation and exploitation, including due to interference by hostile actors. And the National Protective Security Authority, or NPSA website has guidance for academia and industry, and we'll post the link to that in the chat very shortly for you. As there's a lot more information on that. And now I'll pass back to Adam for the application and assessment process.
So here's the timeline of key relevant dates and some anticipated dates later in the year. These are found on the funding opportunity page and also in the expression of interest page. They're listed at the bottom where you can download them and add them to your calendars. So the key one at the moment, we're within the submission period for the expression of interests, which will close on the 4th of March. It is mandatory to submit an expression of interest to us in order to participate in this opportunity at all. And we will be reviewing those internally, the internal panel of EPSRC, which I'll speak about in a second. And later on, if you're successful in the expression of interest, you may be invited to submit into the full stage opportunity. You'll hear about that at the end of April, beginning of May, when the full opportunity opens, and the panels will be later in the year. So that's just a reminder to fill out an expression of interest, and the details of how to do that are both on the submission page and on the funding opportunity. So please ensure that you have sufficient time to prepare your team, your project lead and project co-leads, and talk about with the research office of your host organisation, and leave enough time before the closing date that you can get all of that information into us. Proposals can be multi-institutional, but you can only have one application form for a particular bid proposal. So you have to have one project lead who submits that. So what does the expression of interest ask for? You'll, as mentioned earlier, the project lead name and intended co-leads and host organization. Then if you're planning to target the interseasonal storage area, yes or no, a short summary of the proposed research vision and its objectives, a short summary of how your program will provide additionality to the current and foreseeable landscape of the UK in terms of UKRI portfolio and other large research investments in your particular project area that are existing. So the idea behind that is to ensure that your proposal aligns with what this opportunity is trying to fund in terms of remit and scope, and that it has that core vision of sustainability, and it's not like a mere beneficiary or potential impact. Again, you don't have to provide any indicative costs or project partners. It might be useful to think about yourselves, but that's not requested on this form and is not assessed at this stage. So that's just a summary beyond the EOI stage. Once we've held the internal panel, if you're successful enough to be invited into the full stage, there will be an expert panel which reviews the proposals against some assessment criteria. The assessment criteria of the full stage has been alluded to on the website, but the full information will come out once that funding opportunity is live on the funding finder. They'll go through an expert panel and then into a prioritization panel for shortlisting into rank ordered lists. And there'll be an opportunity for applicant rebuttal after the expert panel. So that's a note, because we have the highlight area of interseasonal energy storage, which has its own ring fence funding of 9 million for up to 3 applications of up to 3 million each in full economic cost. They have a separate funding list, so they'll be ranked on different lists. But we intend to use the same panel, and that panel will cover the expertise required to assess it to an appropriate. And then the assessment criteria for the EOI submission is also listed on the funding opportunity page, and I just summarized that earlier to make sure you're within remit, you're aligned to scope and objectives. The sustainable future is a core focus of the program, not a mere beneficiary. The program is providing additionality to our portfolio and the UK research landscape, current and foreseeable. And also, as a form of demand management, if we note that there are multiple applications surrounding one particular topic area, and with your consent, we'll reach out to all of the teams, and only with everyone's consent, we may suggest that you group as a single consortia around a single bid of the same amount of funding. So on to questions and answer session. I'll pass back to Remit to moderate.
Sure, thanks, Adam. So if you have any questions, please remember to use the Q&A function. If you have any eligibility questions pertaining to an individual or specific applicant group, please email us directly. And if you've got any questions about the UKRI funding service, please reach out to the team that is looking after that. And now we will move into our panel Q&A. So Amanda, Anka and Jim will be joining us, and Adam and I will be moderating. For the first question, so are you prioritizing projects that address multiple themes?
I am answering on behalf of Jim and myself. Very much, if you wanted one of us specifically, let us know. No, we're not specifically prioritizing projects that cover several of these themes. A project needs to be sound in its own right. We've listed some areas that we are keen to hear from, and others where we think we have a lot of investments already. We've had some questions around different areas and whether they're eligible. We're trying to answer all of those questions. If you have a project in an area where we already have funding and you're not sure, please get in touch through the team email addresses of the respective team, so that we can help you bottom that out for you.
Thank you. So our next question is the topic liquid hydrogen solutions, i.e. composite vessels on aircraft, enabling the transition from fossil fuels to low zero emission fuels eligible?
Yeah, so potentially, I think it would be helpful if you could, again, as Anka said, email the team on specifics, but certainly sort of issues around sort of decarbonising transport are potentially sort of in scope. So yes.
Thank you. So we have a few questions around project leads and co-leads and partners. So how can industrial partners, e.g. SMEs, access funding?
This funding opportunity, unfortunately, is not suitable to award funding to businesses such as SMEs. We have eligibility of research technical organizations. There's quite an extensive list of those available on the UKRA website, and I think Remits and Adam have that available already to link in with the webinar Q&A document as well, so people can check up on that, but businesses are not available to receive funding from EPSRC.
There's also a question, I say, from someone else thinking their organisation isn't currently eligible, but could be. There is a process to do that to apply for UKRI funding, not particularly EPSRC funding. Again, we can put that link into the chat.
But to note on that, that process is quite a long process, so
Yeah.
the timing for this call is probably not realistic, just to be aware. It
Correct.
may be, but it's unlikely.
Great, thank you. Next questions. Is ammonia an area of funding interest within the call?
So this is something that we would encourage if, obviously hydrogen is not eligible for the interseasonal energy storage element. So if it's to do with that, then we would suggest contacting the team to give a bit more information on what their idea is, and we can tell you if it's eligible. But without more information, it's not possible for us to say.
Great, thank you. So there's been a few questions in around how many proposals do you expect to be invited to the full proposal stage?
So we don't have an exact answer for that. So on the I would say that we have obviously there will be a limited number that would make sense to bring forward. However, I think somebody else has asked how we are going, what are the criteria for the EOI? So these specifically looking at the points around whether it is in the EPSRC remit and how it actually adds complementarity to our existing net zero portfolio. Does anyone want to add anything on that? No? Okay.
I've just on the interseasonal energy storage, we it's basically within the if it's not hydrogen and it's independent of hydrogen, then there's very little else that we would expect to sift on, basically.
Great, thank you. So there's been another question in around, can you please give some indication of what level of TRL you're looking for?
EPSC predominantly funds in TRLs 1 to 3. Occasionally we will stray into 4, but this, from that point of view, this call is no different. I would say we would be expecting people to outline at the full proposal stage some sort of pathway to how they'll actually contribute towards our 2050 targets and how they will see that impact realised.
So we've had another question in. So how do you envisage programmes could engage policy or policymakers?
Maybe one for me to pick up. There are a number of different routes. We have no set expectation on how you can engage with policy makers. We have a few examples within the manufacturing and the circular economy portfolio. It really depends on what your project is trying to achieve. And if you have existing routes to who to engage with, there are a number of different agencies that are able to assist. within our team, we have a few names of agencies that exist. I'm sure many, if not all, you would find Googling as well. But really what's important is, what are you trying to achieve? What is the overall aim of your project? And then engaging with the appropriate partners. As a result, yes, there are a number of different strategies and other high-level documents that are being scoped at the moment. So it might be that you have access and know someone who's involved in that process, or there is an open consultation. So there are a number of different ways that you can engage through that. We have no standard pathway into doing so. I think there is something on the UKRI website which we can look at and circulate a link for as well, that gives a few more ideas on what could be possible ways of doing so that I might have not listed.
Great, thank you. So there's been a question around how many co-leads are possible, and is it okay to include co-leads from all levels, i.e. advanced to early career researchers?
We have no limit on how many co-leads you can have. Given the size of the proposals, there will be a natural limit as to how many people you can involve. We always are welcoming contributions from teams that span across different career levels. If the project naturally is not constituted that way, that is not a problem either. It's important that you involve the people in the project that can bring the right expertise, the amount of fresh ideas and direction for the success of the project. And how many people that requires will really depend on what you have in mind. And that could vary quite a lot between different projects as well. And I think there was another question relatively similarly. Yes, they can come from different universities. And yes, you don't have to set them all in stone at the EUI stage either. So you are allowed to make changes from the EUI to the full proposal stage.
Great, thank you. So there's been some questions in around interdisciplinarity. So as this is a transdisciplinary call, is there an EPSRC expectation on the percentage that should be within the engineering and physical sciences remit? Normally this is 50%. Is this correct, or should it be higher?
No, so that is correct.
Great. To confirm, are cross-council research proposals supported or not?
It's a variation of the last one. So obviously, if part of the remit goes wider, that is quite normal for the sorts of research proposals we fund in the net zero space. But as the previous person rightly identified, it has to be at least 51% in the EPSRC remit.
Awesome, thank you. So now there's some questions in around assessment. So please, can you clarify how the internal shortlisting will work? Specifically, is the intention to invite all expressions of interest that are deemed to be eligible and meet the assessment criteria through to full stage? If not, how will EPSRC prioritize which ones to invite? If you are prioritizing an expression of interest stage, will you be taking a portfolio approach? So would you invite just the most compelling cases, even if they only address a few portfolio gaps? Or would you be looking to extend invitations to cases that might not be quite so compelling, but which allow a fuller coverage of more portfolio gaps?
That's a very good question. So in the first instance, we would look for just how does it complement our existing portfolio. The second point, I think, is if there were a lot of very good ones within the same in the same area, then that wouldn't actually be meeting the needs of the court. So I don't think we would look to bring through EOIs that were less compelling, but it's really about sort of complementarity to what we've already funded. I think if we were to have a lot in the same area, that's a slightly different question. Do you want to add something to that, Anka?
I think this in part strays into the question of We don't think we'll be able to invite all expression of interest through to a full proposal stage. The indication, one being how many people are on this call, if even a snapshot of you decide to submit a proposal, that would be a very large number already. We will try our best to steer the process in a way to, as Jim said, to reflect where we have made investments already, or where we see complementarity, or addressing particular needs and gaps that exist. We have a few investments that are very broad and cover a lot of the remit of each of these two teams coming together. But there's still gaps. So I think someone asked around our manufacturing research hubs areas in or out. Each of the hub will have its own certain remit. Some of these are relatively broad and others are more narrow. And it will depend what you are proposing to do. I'm trying to think of an example, and I will come back to Francesca, who asked about that. But yes, we will look at the portfolio of what we have already funded, and we will try and address the gaps that exist. And in such a way, you should think about articulating your vision for your programme.
Awesome, thank you. So is there guidance on division of budget within EPSRC and other council remits?
I think that's the same point we've made before. It's the majority of it has to be within the EPSRC remit. And then after that, then there are no specific guidance.
Great, thank you. Another question, can water and water-related research be considered within this call?
I'm assuming this refers to circularity of water, as in a water. It's not.
Yeah, so potentially, so water is a very, very, very broad area. But there are a number of areas where obviously it does touch on sort of issues around sort of net zero, around sort of food, energy nexus, around cooling for energy production issues. And then, yeah, so the sorts of things that you were talking about, Anka. So as long as it is about addressing the net zero challenge and about how that will help us contribute towards 2050 targets, then yes. But obviously the area is much broader than we're looking at in this call. So within those parameters, yes. But it's a very broad question. So if you're worried, I would suggest emailing the team with a little bit more specifics about the particular area you're thinking of.
Great, thank you. So there's a question that states, I understand that for the IES call 5 years is the max. Is this the preferred expected length? For a multi-institutional project, 3 years may be more suitable based on the £3 million available and the nature of the challenge, particularly in the systems area. Can you comment on preference for length?
So we have no expectation on length. The amount of money and the length is the maximum. We've been quite vague in how many we plan to fund. We've put approximately 3 because we have the £9 million budget. But if people want to do shorter, cheaper, there is much more flexibility in this. What we're trying to do is get a breadth of coverage beyond hydrogen. At the moment, a lot of our focus is on the hydrogen, and so we don't know how big a project needs to be. Really, that's for you to decide. But ultimately, the most you can apply for is 3 million, and how it works, you need to make a best case for why that amount of time and why the amount of money to be competitive against the others.
Great, thank you. So there's been some questions in around industry partners. So where would the motivation be for an industry partner to take part in this? If they weren't funded, why would they take part? And what's a good way to identify them?
I will give my perspective. I don't know whether whether Jim or Amanda want to add something in. Industry partners will be able to gain insight into the developments, but also be able to pose their problems to academia with with a possibility of gaining a solution to their problems and helping to advance the developments, the innovation and research developments in that field. So although they can't, we can't pay for staff members to be involved, we can support researchers to go and work within the industry partner, for example. So for someone from academia to go into the industry setting and help learn more about the problems they're facing, or how the research is able to fit into the real world, so to speak. So there are a number of things there that where an interaction for an industry partner could gain benefits. There part to the question, I hope Jim remembers. I'm happy to come back, sorry.
Was that about sort of identifying industry
Oh,
partners?
yes, indeed. So identifying, we have a number of different organisations within the UK that are able to help identify partners. Catapults are one of them, the CPI is others. We have a number of different manufacturing institutes across the country and manufacturing centres. So that number of ways, if you are searching for an industry contact and you are not sure to address, then that is one way. Universities are usually really well connected in their regional areas. Some have some longer standing collaborations or contacts with larger industry partners as well nationally. So these would be my first kind of points of call to try and tease out where to go.
Awesome, thank you. So there's another question that asks, can hydrogen be included within whole systems analysis? Under the IES highlight area, IE is a counterfactual to other forms of IES, and can it be included as part of hybrid and seasonal energy storage systems?
So hydrogen is out of remit, so no percentage of the application should be hydrogen.
Great, thank you. And can we allocate flexible funds to be responsive to meet changes based on findings, i.e. not specify the specific work packages, as it will be an evolving programme of activities?
To some extent, I think it would be up to the applicants to make the case for why that is a sensible thing for the particular area that that they are looking at it, and how that will actually help them make that contribution that we've talked about several times already. I think this is fundamentally different from, say, for example, a program grant, which is also looking to get sort of critical mass to address a particular topic. But there are things around where you specifically have to have some sort of flexibility into your program. That's not part of this team. You can have it, but you have to be able to justify why it makes sense for what you're trying to do.
I think under the interseasonal energy storage, the amount of money available would make it not practical to have unallocated money in that way. But again, if a strong case can be made, but because it is a smaller amount, it would be less likely.
Great, thank you. There's been a number of questions around critical mass. So how important is achieving critical mass for the evaluation? Should proposals describe specifically how critical mass has been reached, or is much like other proposals to show that the proposed team can deliver the project, and sort of how many people, I guess, quantify critical mass as a term?
So I thought Anka was going to answer that question. So there's no set idea. This is sort of like 7 people is enough and 8 people is too many. So it's very much around so the idea is that you will put together the team that you need, which potentially, or perhaps even should be, from across a number of different disciplines, that will actually help you meet the aims of your project. I think what's different and why we talk about critical mass in this area is that we're looking at you sort of answering sort of hard questions that need lots, a fairly big team of and diverse team to actually answer the question. So in terms of specifics, it's very much down to you to actually put forward the case for why you've put forward the team that you want to put forward.
Thank you. So there's been a few questions in around exactly how this call is different. So what's the main difference between this call and a responsive mode call, and how it's different from a program grant call as well?
Okay, so I partly answered the program grant thing. I think I mean the other difference between a program grant is obviously sort of that sort of additionality. I would say a lot of the things are quite similar because, you know, if we're putting a fairly large team together, there are certain things we will expect from you around EDI, around so how you're going to bring ECRs through, how you're going to achieve impact, which are quite similar to any big grant that we would be looking to fund. In terms of responsive mode, I think it's really I would say around ambition. I think we're quite specific on sort of the sorts of timescales where we're looking for people to have some impact, whereas obviously those things are much more open in the responsive mode. Anything else, Anka?
I think the notion of high risk is really one of the major differences. So all the projects assessed as this part will be high risk, whereas in standard mode you will see a number of different approaches being taken, from individuals tackling one project to a larger group of people trying to address a problem through the proposed project. And here we have an emphasis on the high risk, high reward angle. So that would be my main point.
Great, thank you. So there's been another question. Much of the focus seems on technological development of sustainability solutions, but to what degree of importance will you place upon arts, humanities, and social sciences providing a key role in ensuring that sustainability solutions are justly done during technological development?
I think Jim alluded to it a little bit in a previous answer, but just to reiterate that we are not expecting proposals to be solely within the EPSRC remit. So if your project, in order to succeed, includes researchers that would normally apply to other research councils for funding, that could be the Economic and Social Sciences Research Council, it could be the Arts and Humanities Research Council, then that is absolutely fine. It needs to be considered within the project that you are planning. We don't stipulate that you have to involve someone from a different area, but it could really elevate and drive your project forward to include them and to achieve the impact that you are seeking. I think that's what I wanted to bring out. Apologies.
I guess the only other thing I'd add is obviously sort of net zero is a priority across UKRI, and pretty much all the research councils will fund and have net zero as one of their priorities, and will fund areas if you're thinking of things that are perhaps a little bit more focused just on those areas.
Thank you. So can critical mass also include capital, as in the right people and the right equipment?
Yes, we have stipulated the limit for equipment costs that can be requested and the rules around co-funding from a university within the core text. So please double check the numbers in there. There are no additional capital requests possible beyond the level that's stated within the core text. And yes, thank you for highlighting that capital also means people development. So please consider that as part of your project development in what resources are needed to get the right people to support the people as part of the project.
Great, thank you. There's been a few questions in around identifying portfolio gaps. What tips and tricks would you give to potential applicants?
So from an interseasonal energy storage, the gap is not hydrogen. So that's why we're having it. So there is a clear gap. We fund quite a lot of research into the hydrogen area, and we would like to see what other options and solutions there are to interseasonal storage. So by default, that highlight area has identified the gap. Beyond that, we're quite open to what the solutions might be.
So the main way, unfortunately now, the grants on the web system is not searchable in the way that it was, but you can still see what has been funded. And I think it's important that you can see across UKRI in the Gateway to Research programs. I'm just reading a question which also talks about the foreseeable portfolio. I think for the most part, I think we're looking at foreseeable means basically what calls, sorry, to me, means what calls are already in the are already live. Otherwise, I think it's almost impossible for you to do that. You will notice one of the areas that we've got there is nuclear fission, because we will be having a call going live, a fairly large call going live in the next few months. So for the most part, foreseeable is calls that are live or the areas that we've specified.
And to remind people, yes, of course, you cannot comment on calls that are still in progress, such as the Manufacturing for Sustainable Future Hub call, as well as the Sustainable Industrial Futures programs. So where things are not yet announced, we don't expect that you are able to comment on that, because obviously you're not privy to knowing yet what the outcomes would be.
There's been some questions in around the manufacturing research hubs for a sustainable future. So there's a question which states, on eligibility, the guidance says we will not fund areas already supported through the programme successfully funded through the manufacturing research hubs, rounds 1, 2, and 3. But then it states programmes addressing areas covered by investments made in manufacturing research hubs are not excluded from this funding opportunity. So please can we clarify this?
Yes, thank you. So yes, we have a portfolio of manufacturing hubs at the moment, as well as a third round call currently in progress. For the round in progress, of course, you cannot know what will be successful. I don't know what will be successful. And we do have a list of the outlines submitted on the web that is accessible for everyone to see. As a general rule of thumb, the hubs, each hub has its own remit, and that may be fairly wide or fairly specific. A hub in a particular area might therefore cover quite a lot of the research in any given portfolio. So if I'm thinking around, for example, process approaches, there might already be a lot covered, or there might be quite a few gaps that the hubs are not yet addressing. So you would have to tell us why your research is different and not yet covered by a hub, and why this program is the way forward to doing so. Where we have a hub already in that space that is quite extensive, this will be rather bigger challenge, and you might want to get in touch to discuss your idea in a little bit more detail to clarify ahead of submitting an EOR.
Right, Matt, can I just pick up a question actually from Josie, formerly of this parish, around the systems approach? Because I think it's a really good question, and sort of asks about, you know, should it be continually reassessed throughout the duration of the project? And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. Obviously, we're in a very fast-moving space. There's a lot of attention and potentially funding going into sort of the critical mission for 2030 and net zero, particularly through DESNES, but across government. So yes, we are expecting the system, particularly the energy system, I would say, to change quite a lot in the next few years. And obviously we would expect these programs, and indeed any program that we're funding in the area, to adjust to what's going on in their particular space as things evolve.
Great, thank you so much. So we are at the end of our Q&A. So I'm going to pop the last slide up and hand over to Adam to close up.
Yes, thank you everyone for attending. Over 300 of you here today, so thank you for the appetite and best of luck with your expressions of interest if you decide to submit one as a team. And the slides will be made available, and if you haven't had the chance for your questions to be answered, either the ones you submitted in this chat or in the webinar registration form, we'll compile a document with all of our answers and make that available to you as soon as we can over the next week or so. So bear in mind the timelines and the mandatory nature of the expression of interest, and thank you.